back to the Dan Corder Show. South Africa is a movie.
Welcome to the watch party.
It's getting late, but we're not done with you yet. Okay, so you may have seen an announcement last Friday that got a lot of the media, and particularly a lot of legal scholars and lawyers and judges, into a big, excited chat. Basically, if you've missed it, for many years now, I think longer than a decade, different ANC presidents have been saying that they're going to put through plans to make the judiciary, that's our court system and our judges, more independent. Because you do want an independent judiciary that does have some oversight over it from the other branches of government, but can be strong in the face of political pressure when politicians want people to pursue certain cases or not pursue other cases. And late last Friday, Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency announced that they are now going through with quite exciting plans to make the judiciary truly independent. But I'm a lay person and I want to understand this better, and so I'm thrilled to welcome political analyst Mpumelelo Nkabela onto the show. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. Okay, can you deconstruct the situation for us? Firstly, did I tell any lies there?
No.
Okay. Okay, so tell me about the history of trying to make the judiciary more independent. And particularly, can we start with, in what ways does it feel like the current judiciary is vulnerable to political meddling that the judges want to change?
Look, Dan, I think if you look at the history of South Africa, since the president made a remark when they were celebrating 30 years of the Constitution, so I'm thinking this is a more historical reflection and also looking into the future. So historically, let's look at from 1994. The 1994 breakthrough also signified that the courts can no longer be in cahoots with the executive in undermining human rights. So basically, the 1994 transitional arrangement was such that it was underlined or underwritten by a constitution which had a Bill of Rights. And at the heart of the Bill of Rights is that these rights should be justiciable. In other words, they should be dealt with in a court of law if there are any disputes. But the courts have to enforce the rights in the face of the rights being threatened or trampled upon. This involves rights of individuals, basic human rights. So the Constitution then had three important provisions for me. The first one was it gave the courts the rights of what we call judicial reviews. In other words, the decisions of the executive, which is a cabinet or the president or a minister or any other organ of state, can be reviewed and be set aside by a court of law. And the second thing that was critical for me was Section 165 of the Constitution, which also says that all organs of state must ensure that the courts are efficient, are independent, are impartial, and all of that. It's a must. It's not negotiable. And then Section 173 also says that the courts, the high courts, the Supreme Court of Appeal, and the Constitutional Court have got inherent power. Inherent power. It can't be given, it can't be taken. They've got inherent power to decide and protect on their own procedures. And they've got the power to develop the common law and to make decisions. That's inherent. It can't be taken away by a minister or a president. It can't be given.
Okay, so is it a situation where we feel, the legal community feels like those three pillars have not been upheld well enough up until this point, and there need to be new developments to protect the judiciary and make it more self-sufficient and independent? Or is it the fact that we feel like those three pillars have been upheld for the first 30 years of the Constitution, and now we want to extend it?
Judges have been complaining for a while that even though the Constitution, as I've stated, guarantees their independence to make judgments the way they like and to, the system has got its own checks and balances. But they've been complaining that they don't have the administrative independence. And for example, they can't decide on budgets for the courts. They may be working in a court that's chaotic, files piling all over the place, inefficient administration of the courts, but they've got no say. They have to depend on the Minister of Justice.
And the Justice Department.
And the Justice Department to provide for the administrative efficiency and to make sure that the courts can run. Otherwise, the judges had no say in that. So
the judges can be undercut by the Justice Department's failings or inadequacies.
Yes, there's a room to undermine the court system or
Right.
the judiciary by virtue of the executive having the authority to run the administration part of the courts, not necessarily the writing of the judgments, they're not part of that, but through the way they procure or they appropriate money and for the courts and the way they hire staff. They can interfere with the way the judiciary works.
What's this new plan to get the judiciary to have the control to design their own court processes and make things more efficient?
Well, I think what the president is saying now is that the government is moving further now to give the judges more autonomy over the administrative affairs of their function.
Right.
So they can have more say on how money, once it has landed in the portfolio, in the judicial, how money is used. What are the most important priorities? Because all along, for them to do that, they have to speak to the minister. And the minister then goes to Parliament.
Yeah.
And Parliament can say yea or nay and that type of thing. And the minister comes back and said, well, I've had a stumbling block, I can't get this for you. So,
and you've wasted so much time just going through that consultative process too.
Yes. So judges will now, at least the Office of the Chief Justice will be doing that on behalf of the judiciary.
Okay.
But there's always a risk.
Okay.
It all sounds nice, but there's a risk to it, in my view, that once you get the judiciary to be entangled in administrative affairs, it would mean that if something goes wrong there, if there's an irregularity, for example, a tender is wrongly allocated and someone's body gets the tender and all that, you tarnish the judiciary.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a story recently about how an IT tender was given by the Office of the Chief Justice, it ended up being investigated for corruption, malfeasance, and all of that.
Sure.
And the headline goes, Office of the Chief Justice.
Tender
goes wrong. So now it almost as if a judge is implicated in wrongdoing, when in fact it's the administrative part of it. Okay. It's not the judicial part of it. So people might find it difficult to separate the two. So that's the risk that I see here.
Okay.
So if you allocate the judiciary the function to run the administrative affairs, those must be run by highly ethical individuals that should know very well that any mistake, they're actually besmirching the entire judiciary.
And you also need, you would hope that even if the judiciary, through the Office of the Chief Justice, is taking over the administration of the courts, that doesn't mean judges are doing that work. Judges need to be judges. They need to do the work of being judges. You need to flesh out an administrative team whose job it is, as you say, to be highly ethical and to run the administration of the court. Because that's something that I've seen a couple of people worry about is okay, the core function of the Chief Justice is to preside over the Constitutional Court, the highest court in our land. Yeah. There are many cases in front of the Constitutional Court also. Chief Justice Meyer, now her office, is now also going to probably soon be responsible for the administration of the courts. And there, I can imagine, is some concern that she also, the Chief Justice, needs to be left alone to do the job of being a Chief Justice in court, right? But now her office is also going to be responsible for this. Do you see a potential concern where the Chief Justice is just not as available to be the Chief Justice in the Concourt as often as she should be, because she needs to now be involved in the kind of administration of the court system?
I would say that's a second risk in addition to what I've already mentioned. It's a second risk because you don't want judges to be entangled in administration and not do their core function.
Yeah.
Their core function is to sit and hear cases, resolve disputes, provide justice efficiently, as quickly as possible. But if they're entangled in administrative matters, they spend more time attending to administration, then it defeats the entire function of being a judge. And you saw recently, I think a week or 2 weeks ago, Chief Justice Meyer going to the Eastern Cape in one of the courts there, for what she called an oversight visit. And what that was triggered by allegations that there were court officials that were extorting bribes when members of the public come for service in court, whether they want to lodge a complaint or whether they want to follow up a case, or lawyers doing their work there. You had a situation where some people are asking for cool drink money and that type of stuff. And then she went there, and I asked myself, what would she do there? As a judge,
she's just trying to scare them. I don't know,
You see, so there's limitations to what judges can do in that situation, because that, I would imagine, it's a function of the police to investigate corruption. It's a function of the NPA to bring matters to court, and then it's a function of a judge to adjudicate whether there's criminality or not, who is to be guilty, who is not guilty. So the moment judges stray into the administrative function, the lines get blurred, and the whole idea of so-called separation of powers can be at risk. That's why, as you give judges the judiciary more administrative control of courts, you have to be mindful not to breach the separation of power line.
Yes.
At the same time, you have to give the judiciary more control of what is within their purview for the dispensing of justice efficiently. So it's one of those dilemmas that's
tough.
The government is to tread very carefully how this is done. The judges should also not be excited that they suddenly will now have more power to control their affairs, because they may control their affairs to their own detriment.
Totally. But at core, the Justice Department has consistently failed, and we have a court system now where some people don't even open cases at the police station because they don't believe there'll be any justice. There's no point going to court. There's no point doing anything. And so you do need something to happen, and we wait and see. But now I can truly say I probably understand this dilemma. Thank you so much for your time. And Mpumelelo Mkhabela, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm deeply grateful.